Mahalo and welcome back to Maebashi, which is episode 5. And oh my god, I think last episode I talked about how this plotline hit a little bit too close to home. Now it just full scale. It's like taking me out. It feels like they ripped a page out of my own life story with where we went with this storyline. It's so painful. We find out a little bit about why Mai is so insanely connected to Yua and like why she's willing to do basically anything. We learned that Mai grew up fairly lonely. She felt very isolated and couldn't connect with a lot of the kids that she grew up with until she ended up meeting Yua. Yua not only sat there and hung out with her and was a friend to her to some degree, but she's the one who actually created the whole phrase "go for 70% over 100," which it's so painful because this is precisely with like my toxic friend. This is precisely what happened to me, where I was somebody who grew up very very nerdy, and I also think I just grew up with a generation that grew up way too fast. There were people wanted to like move on to makeup and like talk about all the boys we had crushes on. Like at age 6, I wasn't there. Like immediately, cartoons were out. Girls weren't allowed to play video games. Like so much of being a child was robbed from me. And I had the toxic friend in my life who, at the time and still to this day, as much as it pains me to admit, was the person who was like, "Who cares what everybody else thinks? Live your best life. Do whatever you want. We don't have to sit here and chase the expectations of what like was popular for our age group at the time." And it's so upsetting. It's so upsetting when this happens, and it's so upsetting to see this happen with Yua, where she ends up being this inspiration, but ends up being a victim of precisely the thing that she had a great slogan against. And oh, it's just so rough, dude. This plot line absolutely hits a little too close to home. So at the top of the episode, we learned some information we didn't know before, which basically explains where our Mappo ended up going when Mai had stolen it, which was that Yua is a part of this competition, this kind of like modeling competition, to which we learn that there's like rankings and voting, and also that the producers suck. It does not help. Like I think this time-wise, I want to say probably leads into where we left off for the last episode, where the producers are like, "Oh man, all these girls suck. If only we had Kumai. She's so cool. Wish we were working with her instead." Which just, drives the nail harder into Yua, where her insecurities absolutely explode. We also see that in the ranking, which this is for all of the theories that we had before, which I'm not going to say I was too far off. We do learn that Mai did not use the Mappo to inflate her own following. She got that completely on her own. She used it on Yua, but instead of like increasing Yua's like follower count on her not quite Instagram, she used it to vote more times to put Yua up higher in the rankings, which is such. I'm just like, girl, you poor soul, doing this for somebody who doesn't deserve it. But nonetheless, we get to where we were last episode, with Yua at her lowest, completely and utterly demanding Mai hand over the Kumai account, which Mai does immediately. I was curious how much Mai cared about this account. We've seen her talk very flippantly about it when, before it was revealed that it was her. And so it makes more sense as this episode unfolds that Mai created this account solely for the sake of Yua. She didn't ever actually have major attachments to this account for herself. She doesn't seem to have any self-drive. Like, that's, I think, the most depressing thing to learn as this episode, falls apart. We learn that Mai never had any personal drive. Everything and all of her motivation this entire time has just been for Yua, which is such a cut, dude. That's such a cut. And it's even worse because she, gives the account to Yua, and then she's like, "Oh, I know you're still feeling bad. Why don't we do what we did in the past?" Which is, again, such a cut, dude. Such a deep cut where she's like, Mai's so desperately trying to do all these things, hoping that she'll resurrect the person Yua was when she was a child. That happy kid who was nice to her and who was an inspiration, ignoring everything else, just hoping that it's like, if I keep doing these nice things for you, you'll be better. And that's, like I said before, that's not how it works. That never works in reality. No matter how kind you are to somebody, no matter how much you try to help them out, help them achieve their dreams through whatever means. They're not going to go back to being the person they were unless they choose that on their own. And obviously Yua isn't. She's not somebody who's trying to face her insecurities. She's not somebody who can sort the blame on anybody other than everyone else but herself. It's so painful. Moving back to our girls, we have everybody very excited with the reveal that Mai is Kumai, where we have Mai again reiterate the fact that the Kumai account was solely created for Yua. Interestingly enough, we have a couple of different things come from the characters. Obviously, Yuna and Choco were very excited about the Kumai account. Kyoka immediately kind of like zooms in on the fact that Mai obviously is very depressed and not feeling well, but at the same time, Kyoka's the kind of character who's like, if you don't want to talk about it, I'm not going to push it. Which you can get the impression, and you see this more towards the latter half of the episode, that Kyoka clearly, like, is a nosy character. She's a bit nosy and wants answers for stuff, but she's like, I ain't gonna push it, though. If you don't want to say it, I'm not gonna push it, but, like, I'm kind of pushing it. But I like that she's, like, the one character who's very, like, genuinely concerned about Mai. From the sake of, like, I see a person who I view as a friend, and I don't really like seeing her hurt. Which is cute. And then we have Azu, which I think this is kind of the best way to handle Azu after how intense she was for her plotline. Like, just how sharp and cold, and, like, if you're a person who did not like Azu initially, I think the best way to transition her character to try to make her more likable to the audience is to have her have that sharp and intense personality, but most of it's in defense of Mai. Like, she's so upset, and I think there's a little bit of a tsundere if you're not picking up on it. She is being mad on Mai's behalf. Like, her beef with Yua, there's a little, like, personal stuff where she doesn't like Yua. But it's really because she's super pissed off at how Yua treats Mai. And I think it's really cute. I like that, like, this is, like, you'll see there's a couple of little Easter eggs if you pick up on the episode where Azu is being very much there for Mai. I think it's really cute. But we also see one of the reasons why she's so angry is because Yua has immediately taken over the Kumai account, but doesn't have the same energy and obviously is not doing the same thing. I do think it's funny that Azu's like, well, this is clearly Yua who's now taken over the account. And it's like, you guys couldn't figure out it was Mai before. All she's doing is, like, covering her eyes in the pictures. Maybe it's just because maybe Azu didn't look that hard the first time to realize it was her. But we get a little bit into the witch stuff where they explain that all of the Mappo except for one has been spent, and that if it goes to 0, they all will not be witches any longer, and they basically failed this trial period and will have to go back to being normal girls. Now, the reactions of the crew are really interesting. Now, obviously we know Yua doesn't really care that passionately. She just kind of got, like, put on the train, so she doesn't have a huge reaction. Kyoka, interestingly, does not also have a huge reaction. Either that or she's, like, really hiding it. She's like, oh, this sucks, but, like, she's not overly vocal about it. Azu, we see, has a big reaction, and we know precisely why Azu is very upset, and she, like, needs the magic. But the person who has a very strong reaction, at least has a very strong vocal performance, this is the only, like, clip here where you see Choco get very upset about it. But Choco is one of the more stressed out people about hearing that she can't become a witch, which is very... We don't get much from Choco thus far in the series. They've really, unless they've been hiding it well, there has not been a lot that we've gotten in regards to Choco's character. But now we know, at least, like, compared to Kyoka, she really cares about being a witch, which means she has some kind of, like, wish or ability that she wants to be able to do. And I think that's really interesting because Choco's going to be the next character. So, like, just keep in mind, Choco really wants this. But why? Anyways, we have Mai feel incredibly bad about using the Mappo up, both last time and now, and she's very stressed about, like, disappointing everybody, which, again, I think one of the things that we see a lot moving from this point in this episode on, so much of the way Mai has been behaving throughout the series, and specifically her interactions with everybody else, looking back on it, is a lot of her expressing her mannerisms based on always being in a toxic friendship. Like, she explains that Yua is, like, the only person that she's ever truly interacted with. Otherwise, she's been very isolated from people. So, looking back on a lot of her interactions with the girls, her reactions come from a place of being in a toxic friendship. It's one of the reasons why she had such a negative reaction to the way, like, Azu was behaving last episode, where she probably is used to seeing Yua just be nasty to people or cut off people very harshly. And Mai has internalized that as, oh, this is the way a friend behaves, because that's the way Yua behaves. And it's interesting just to see her walk away with like being part of a toxic friendship. And like here she's feeling really regretful and stuff and she's overly apologetic. And it hurts. It hurts to see that she's never really had good friends up until this point. And we still get a little bit more of these like flashbacks where her obsession with Yua comes from this point of like she once had a supportive friend, which makes it all the more depressing when you know that like every single action Yua has had, which I think a little bit of her childhood self wasn't as evil as she is now, but all of it has been super self-serving. I kind of like I touched on it before where I thought that this series might go in the direction where they try to redeem Yua to some degree or like justify it because she was ultimately a customer, and they kind of do very little, but I'm glad that they stuck to the realism that I talked about before, where like the only way to really deal with this kind of person is to cut her out. And then there's this like, oh my god, the transition for this, like animation wise and storytelling wise, this transition is like evil, where you have this scene of them on the couch together and having fun, to them both being in a place where they're isolated. And you have this very evil, like manipulative look of Yua being like, ha 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 ha, I'm like, I'm popular now because I have the Kumai account. Where it transitions to Mai just being depressed. Despite doing all of this, she's still depressed. She doesn't have what she wants. It's not paying off. It's taking a toll on her. And it's so painful. The girls go back out because they have not had customers in 2 weeks and they really need to get the Mappo up. And finally, I don't know much other than just storytelling wise. It makes sense that they knock on the door and they're like, all right, Mai, you gotta like open up a little bit. You gotta tell us a little bit about what's going on. And Kyoka comes back with like, hey, I think you can tell us what you spent all the Mappo on. It'd be really helpful. Which she does reveal that it was for the votes. It was to vote to get Yua up higher in the ranking. Because it's one of those, like, I guess this is like how the Japanese voting happens. Whereas, like, I feel like in the West for a lot of stuff we vote for, you get one vote and that's it. But for a lot of Japanese voting, you can come back every day and vote once, but she used the Mappo so that she could vote more times in one day in order to like really shoot Yua up into the rankings. And that's what she ended up using the Mappo. And she's stressed about it now because she's like, oh shoot, is there a way? Like, I'm really upset that I've actually like, she cares about the other girls at this point, and she's like, I feel bad for abusing you guys and nearly ruining all of your careers for the sake of trying to do this. And she's like, can I refund it? Is there a way to take it back? But for the most part, the girls are relatively supportive about it. And I enjoy the way that Yuna and Kyoka end up supporting her in this time. I'm kind of glad it's not Azu and Choco because I think both of them are very like high emotions, and I think what Mai really needed was a quieter moment. I think that's probably the best explanation for why Mai is able to open up here and she wasn't able to open up at the top of the episode. But I'm glad that they, for the most part, addressed that, like, hey, what's happening to you isn't cool, buddy. Like, in a much calmer tone. They're like, hey, what's going on? Why do you care so much about a person who is mistreating you? Which is nice. And especially, I'm glad that the way they handle Yuna's character for all of this, because for the most part, she's been like, we forgive everybody, friendship is magic kind of deal. But there's just so much more nuance to a situation like this. And I like, especially as we go on, how Yuna faces this and how she addresses it as a main character. Nonetheless, we get more backstory onto why the Kumai account even got created. She explains that as time went on, like, originally she was besties with Yua on the grounds of, like, they played video games together, but Yua got more into, like, makeup and social media in order to, like, support her the best. Mai was like, I'll also do social media. I'll make sure, like, I'm in the same place and I can, like, like all of her posts and understand how it works and just, like, be this, like, perfect kind of, like, secretary-esque role. Or as the show likes to say, the video game support role is her favorite thing to do. And it just so happened that Mai kind of was better at it, which is, I absolutely see where Yua comes from, like, being really insecure and jealous about that. But at the same time, Mai doesn't deserve the hatred. And believe it or not, people finally, like, the general public is like, hey, this girl is clearly not Kumai, and they're all like, Kumai's account got hacked, who is this person? And, gets the hatred she deserves. But again, Mai, being the absolute sweet, poor little baby angel that she is, still is trying to be like, I'm here for you, we can solve it, like, all I want you to do is be happy. I'm not trying to make things worse for you. And eventually convinces her to come back to the shop and try to get the wish granted. One thing that they did is that they're like, oh no, we're out of Mappo, so we need to go into energy saving mode, and they, like, turn the whole, like, store dark, which was like, it's a bit. That's actually so clever for handling the lighting for the scene because it's like so dramatic with the darker lighting. Like that's a clever little play you had there for artistic vision, and I approve. Like this whole sequence comes forward and it's just so good. It looks so pretty. But we also have back to Yuna in this situation where Maya's like, I know that Yua's a terrible person. I know that Yua sat there and, like, has only been friends with me and came over to my house because she wanted the video games we had access to and the makeup my older sister had. Like, I know that she's a bad friend. But I was hoping that, again, if I got her to a point where she was happy, she could just be a good person and she would like me and she would choose me, which, not gonna lie, there's a little bit of sapphic undertoning going on here. I'm gonna put that on the table. But I like that Yuna brings it up and it also fits the video game theme, which is, are you really, like, is it really worth helping this person? Are you really doing the right thing by helping her cheat? Where it's like, you've been helping her as a friend, but you've been doing it by cheating. And is helping somebody cheat really, like, the right thing to do? Is that really what a good friend would do? Which I think is a smart enough angle to take with Yuna, because again, Yuna's like, let's just do the nice thing. Let's just help this person out, and then they'll be good. But that's not what happens with a character like this. Yua sucks. Yua needs to have some internal growth, and we can't just nice her into being a decent person because it doesn't work that way. But at least, like, Yuna hitting the category of, like, we're helping her in an unhealthy way, and it's not going to make anything better, is the best angle you can get. Because, like, I still don't think Yuna is the one who, like, I don't think this whole debacle is completely solved. But I do think Yuna at least putting that, like, seed of this is not the best way to help Yua is as close as we're going to get for what you could do and a way to resolve this in a, like, pink lead kind of way. Nonetheless, we go into my song, and dude, this whole thing is an emotional ride. I also think this is probably one of my favorite stages thus far. Like, I absolutely love the imagery that they have here. There's a lot of mixed media. It's got a lot of video game theme, but the stage in itself is literally, like, you can see it's Mai and Yua's heads, like, merged together. Like, they did such a phenomenal job with how they handled this stage. It's very cute. You also see in the imagery throughout the song this whole bit of, like, Yua being sort of the lead character and Mai being some kind of support. Like, she's the healer here. And we just, like, see the imagery that they have. Again, I really like the mixed media that they go on here because it's very interesting, kind of like a little bit of 3D models and, like, painterly style stuff going on. It's just very, very pretty while also being, like, such a cut. Because while this song was going on, I was like, there's no way where we left this relationship off, that things are going to be, like, sunshine and rainbows by the end of it, and I would feel like it'd be wrong if they did. Like, my whole, again, still under the impression at this point watching the episode that, like, they're going to try to redeem Yua and she's just a good friend now. Also, just again, driving home this, like, way that Mai views herself in the relationship is you have Yua as player 1, but Mai sees herself as an NPC. She doesn't even see herself as a player 2. Doesn't even consider herself on the board. As well as this perspective of, like, chasing after her. And then I believe the levels here are them doing ages. And this is probably the most painful part where she comes with a flower. And it feels like a borderline confession where she's like, girl, I love you. Girl, I love you. And you was like, no. Like, it's so heartbreaking. And we end on this whole, like, bitter end, which this is one of the things where I'm like, this series either needs to have a second season or they really need to go hard with, like, coming back to these plot lines. Because obviously, Azu's plotline is still relatively unfinished. And so is mine. Like, we end on a bitter end. We don't have a happy ending to this. Not that I really want to see her, like, patch things over with Yua, but I'd love to see her, like, with another character that makes her happy. Whether it's on Team Friendship or if this genuinely does go a sapphic direction for her. I just want more. And if you know what? If I need a second season, I need a second season, okay? I want this to continue. These storylines don't feel like, they feel like such phenomenal introductions, but there's no way they can conclude this all in 12 episodes in such a satisfying way. And I guess this is where I'll touch on it. I genuinely would love a series like this to have a second season, but I do not know how well it will do. Like, trust and believe, this series is something that absolutely appeals to me. My demographic is very much, like, satiated with a series like this. Unfortunately, and I don't know how well it's doing in Japan, I know it's not going to do super well in the West. Like, I've already seen 1,001 people call this series way too woke, which is mad depressing. But this series, at the end of the day, in terms of what the anime industry has as a standard, it's a series that has the perspective of girls, but it doesn't have any fan service. It doesn't, like, I don't even know if fan service is the right term too, but there's a lot of like idol-esque series that will do pandering for a male audience in ways that are outside of just like the typical like bodily fan service. Like Love Live is one that will absolutely, like, I don't have time to break down everything, but Love Live is a series, or like Idolmaster are like idol series that will do things that make themselves pander to a male audience with the way that they handle the characters. But this series, like, wholeheartedly has been very female perspective and female oriented. Like, it's had such a feminine attitude the entire time. All the girls' issues have been very feminine issues. Like, I think there's stuff that guys could relate to, but it's definitely a lot of like a girl's view and a girl's perspective. And with the industry unfortunately being incredibly like male oriented these days, even more so than when I was a kid. Like, we used to have a lot of series that were shoujo. We used to have a lot more josei kind of anime hit the market. We have had like so few anime a season that are really genuinely meant for girls and not doing something to pander to men. And unfortunately the industry just doesn't see value in this kind of stuff. I really, really hope something like this is doing well. I hope that like this is reaching the right audience because it's such a phenomenal series. But I don't know if this is going to be even from Japan's view, where they don't super love a lot of feminism. I'm really worried that this is going to be too woke for Japan as well, and it's not going to do well. Because we mostly needed to do well in Japan. If it did really well in the West, like if it popped off on Crunchyroll everywhere else, it still wouldn't be enough for it to get a second season. It has to do well in Japan. And I want to see it do well. I would love to have a second season. But, emotions. Now, here's where I was talking about, like, Easter eggs right here. Mai wakes up and realizes, like, Yua has rejected her. And she's like, what happened? Did we fail? What happened? I want you to note that she is on a purple object under her that's being used as a pillow. And that object, very specifically, is Azu's outfit. This is Azu's normal outfit that she's using as a pillow because Azu cares about her. She may be a little bit of a tsundere, but she cares about her. The friendship seeds are planted, guys. They're becoming friends. They're getting closer, and it's actually done really well. I really like this series. And poor Mai is like, oh, we did it. We granted the wish. She wished for something, maybe we did succeed. And then you have the cold reality that the wish that she wished for was to erase everything that happened the past few days. To not have the Kumai account handed over, to not have, like, all these, like, basically her never showing up at the shop in the first place. And essentially saying that she cut Mai off. She's erasing Mai from her existence. And effectively so that we have Yua trying to pursue the thing she wants without the kind of cheat code that is Mai. But that doesn't mean that doesn't suck for Mai. She deserves so much better. Like, I was really hoping at the end of the day, because for me at least, when I had my toxic friend, I was the one who cut it off. But I think it makes sense for the likability of Mai from a writer's perspective that they don't have Mai cut her off, that Mai just kind of stays this victim of a crappy friendship. Because I think some people would probably dislike Mai if she kind of 180'd on Yua and admitted that she sucked. I would love it, but I can get that they wouldn't want to do that because that could potentially make Mai a dislikable character. But it doesn't hurt any less to see Mai abandoned, despite her giving so much for Yua. But it was necessary. Like, the damage of this relationship really needed to be cut off. And we see Yua again trying to pursue her career on her own. And we do see that she has the one little, like, hairband that she had gotten from Mai. So there's that connection that they still have, and that she doesn't have a completely negative and abusive outlook on Mai, but, like, we don't have to see Yua again, though. She doesn't have to re-enter the story, She can do her own thing, and I genuinely don't want to see her and Mai resolve anything ever. This has been my TED Talk, thank you. Like, this is, like, the moderate, like, again, I don't think they were going to make Yua ridiculously evil or, like, completely irredeemable. I think there's some, like, this implication that she can grow and be a better person, because, again, that's the whole point of her being a customer. But I'm glad it did not end sunshine rainbow friendship for her and Mai, because I don't think there was any coming back from that garbage friendship. And at the very least, we see everybody now kind of reaching this point of being friends. And I think it works, too, because Azu and Mai, I think, were the two cornerstones of the lack of foundation this group had for synergy. I think those two had the most not really getting together with the group. Because obviously, Choco and Kyoka were just like, yeah, we're part of the group. It is what it is. Choco being very much, yeah, like, we're a group. Yuna obviously was always like, yeah, friendship. And then Kyoka's like, yeah, friendship. So I'm glad that we acknowledge here at episode 5, close to, like, we're one episode away from being halfway through the series, that the group is officially, like, behaving as a group, and that they all kind of now care about each other. And moving forward, I know Mai's gonna be more of a background character moving forward, but I'm hoping to see her just, like, have this healing journey of having friends treat her better. Like, it was kind of hard to see the characters be nice to Mai throughout this episode, and her being taken aback by their kindness, being like, I don't know that friends behave this way. And I was like, that's because you've had a garbage friend the whole time. You don't know what it's like to be loved and cherished. I think the other thing that's interesting in regards to Mai is that Mai reveals that so much of everything she's done has been for Yua. Joining, like, the witches, her whole, like, backstory has just been for Yua. But now that she's part of the group, it's like she's like, I still want to be a witch and I still want to be here. But it's going to be interesting to see what her motivation changes to. Because obviously Azu's, like, goals are still 100% the same after her plotline. But Mai now has no purpose. Other than maybe she wants to just be friends and get along with everybody here. But I'm hope they readdress the fact that Mai now is an open slate for what her motivations are to continue forward. So, again, this is why we need a second season. I'm excited to see her become more part of the group and see kind of a balancing between her personality of being somebody who's a little standoffish versus somebody who's overly dedicated to friends. I'm hoping to see a better balance in that as we go forward. And then, like I said, the next episode is the Choco episode. I talked about this a little bit on my stream Sunday, but I'll talk about it here too. Choco is that kind of character who is a sunshine character. And writing-wise, and so far the way the story has gone, my big theory is that she's gonna have, like, a sad team backstory. Like, they always pull this with the sunshine character. The character with the biggest smile has, like, the darkest past. I'm expected, especially, like, look at the lighting for this. Look at this very moody lighting they have going on for Choco right here. She's gonna have some kind of dark, sad TM backstory, dude. And she's just using her sunshiny personality as a mask to cover for, like, how depressed she is. They're gonna pull some stuff like that. I'm prepared that this is gonna be the one plotline that wrecks us the most. I'm just saying. I think they're gonna pull something, like, if this just ends up being a bright, sunshiny thing, and, like, you know, it's all sunshine and rainbows these 2 episodes, that's gonna be the real plot twist. But also, in terms of, like, theories and stuff regarding Choco, there hasn't been a lot. We have not gotten a lot from her character other than just seeing her, like, be pretty, like, nice and letting, like, a lot of insults kind of roll off. The only things that I can theorize based on the very little information we have, with her, caring about the fact that she wants to be a witch. She clearly has something she desires. We also have her mention a couple times that she has not had a lot of it. Like, she's like, this is the first time I've ever done da-da-da-da-da. So it feels like either she comes from, like, my 2 theories are she comes from a poor background and has not had the opportunity to do a lot of different things. And potentially could be the kind of character that has, like, siblings. So her bright demeanor may have been like, I had to grow up fast and seem happy and perfect for my siblings so that they don't get depressed in our situation. Or the other direction they could go is that she comes from a very strict family that's never let her do anything. And, like, you know, having, like, really depressing, like, serious parents who are very controlling kind of pushes you to, like, have an outside demeanor. Like, again, you have to build a mask of, like, I'm the perfect child. Life is so happy. Sunshine and rainbows. When it's, like, again, sad TM. Sad TM backstory. Those are my, like, main theories for Choco. So we'll see where she ends up landing. I think there's a lot of possibilities for her. And we'll see where that goes. So until then, bye-bye!